My beloved child, something has shifted around your home, and before you move past these words, stay with me, because the surprising news connected to this moment is not arriving in the way you have imagined. There are moments when heaven speaks through peace, moments when an answer appears through an ordinary conversation, and moments when a door begins opening so quietly that you almost mistake it for another ordinary day. But this is where the story begins. Archangel Michael stands within this fictional spiritual message as a symbol of courage, clarity, protection, and the strength to recognize what has been hidden beneath uncertainty. And the message is simple: do not judge the next chapter by the silence of the last one. Something that appeared delayed may have been developing beyond your sight. Something you believed had forgotten your address may already be finding its way toward your life. Don't look away now. The first revelation is connected to your house, but not merely to walls, doors, windows, or rooms. Your house represents the place where your private emotions live, the place where you remove the mask you wear for everyone else, the place where unanswered questions become louder after the world grows quiet. That is why this message meets you there. You have carried questions into that space. You have wondered whether the effort you gave mattered, whether the prayers whispered when nobody could hear them reached anywhere, whether the patience you showed was leading somewhere or simply exhausting you. Yet imagine for a moment that the silence was never empty. Imagine that beneath everything you could see, pieces were moving into positions you could not yet understand. Stay till the end, because the final meaning of the surprising news is different from what the opening makes you expect. You may initially think this is about a message arriving on your phone, a knock at your door, an unexpected conversation, a letter, an opportunity, or somebody suddenly speaking words you have waited a long time to hear. Perhaps one of those things becomes part of your story, perhaps not. The deeper revelation is that what heaven has sent in this symbolic story is recognition. The ability to recognize the right door when it appears. The courage to stop chasing doors that repeatedly close. The wisdom to understand why certain delays protected your peace rather than punished your patience. Your answer is closer than you think, but closeness does not always mean distance. Sometimes an answer becomes close because you finally become ready to recognize it. There is a reason your attention was pulled toward this message today. Not because you should become afraid of missing something, but because your heart may be standing at the edge of an emotional realization. Something huge is waiting for you inside that realization. Think about the last season of your life. There were moments when you almost forced an outcome because uncertainty felt unbearable. There were conversations you replayed. There were possibilities you mentally rebuilt again and again. There were nights when you wondered why something so important could remain unresolved for so long. Yet what comes next changes everything. The delay may have been teaching you the difference between what merely excites you and what genuinely brings you peace. The surprising news coming into your house symbolizes something entering your inner world that cannot be easily removed once understood: clarity. And clarity changes everything, because once you truly see what deserves you, what aligns with you, and what repeatedly drains you, you cannot comfortably return to pretending you do not know. Stay with me. There is another layer. Picture a closed door inside your home. Behind that door is a room you rarely enter. In this spiritual symbolism, that room represents the part of your heart where you placed unfinished dreams. Not dead dreams. Not impossible dreams. Simply dreams you became tired of explaining. You stopped mentioning them because people questioned them. You stopped expecting them because disappointment became heavy. You learned to smile when someone asked whether everything was okay, even while a quiet voice inside you wondered when your own turning point would arrive. Now imagine Archangel Michael standing before that symbolic door, not breaking it open, not forcing anything, simply placing a hand upon it and saying, "Look again. Don't skip." The door was never locked. You had simply stopped reaching for the handle. And that changes the meaning of everything. Maybe the surprising news is not that something impossible suddenly appears from nowhere. Maybe the surprise is discovering that something valuable remained available while discouragement convinced you otherwise. Maybe an opportunity you dismissed deserves another look. Maybe a talent you abandoned deserves another attempt. Maybe the conversation you feared can finally happen with greater maturity. Maybe the person you became while waiting is actually the greatest preparation for what comes next. Stay till the end. The mystery gets deeper because the house in this story has another meaning: inheritance. Not necessarily money or possessions, but everything passed into your life through experiences, memories, lessons, patterns, and expectations. Some of those things strengthened you. Others taught you to expect less than you deserved. Perhaps you became accustomed to delays. Perhaps you became so familiar with uncertainty that peace began feeling suspicious. Perhaps whenever something good approached, part of you immediately searched for the hidden disappointment. But what if the next chapter asks you to stop treating every blessing like it must contain a secret loss? What if the surprising news is that you are allowed to receive good things without interrogating them until the joy disappears? Something huge is waiting for you, and it begins with permission, the permission to believe that your future does not have to repeat your past. Don't look away now. There is a symbolic sound approaching the house in this story. At first it seems like footsteps outside. You listen carefully. Your heart becomes alert. You wonder who could possibly be arriving. But then you realize the sound is coming from inside the house. It is coming from the room containing everything you thought you had lost. And suddenly the story turns. What comes next changes everything. You walk toward that room and discover that nothing supernatural or frightening is waiting there. Instead, you find versions of yourself you left behind. The hopeful version, the confident version, the creative version, the version who once believed life could become larger than the circumstances surrounding it. They were never completely gone. They were waiting beneath disappointment. This is what heaven has sent you in the symbolic language of this message: remembrance. Remember who you were before uncertainty convinced you to become smaller. Remember what made your eyes brighten before exhaustion became your normal expression. Remember what you wanted before you began editing your dreams according to other people's expectations. Your answer is closer than you think because some answers do not arrive from outside. They awaken from within. And yet, there is still news approaching from beyond that symbolic door. Stay with me, because this is where the story begins again. The atmosphere changes. The house feels different, not because the furniture moved, but because your perception did. Suddenly you notice light coming through a window you had ignored. You notice that morning has arrived while you were staring at yesterday's darkness. You notice that the door ahead is not the same door that closed behind you. And then comes the first once-in-a-lifetime revelation. Sometimes the breakthrough is not getting back what left. Sometimes the breakthrough is becoming someone who no longer needs the old chapter to return in order to feel complete. That realization is surprising because you spent so much time believing closure required another person's explanation, another opportunity, another apology, another confirmation. But perhaps closure begins when your peace stops requiring permission from the past. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you beyond this point, because the message about your house is about to become even more personal. There is one particular place in every home where people naturally leave things when they first enter: a table, a chair, a shelf, a corner near the doorway. Symbolically, this represents what you allow into your emotional world before deciding whether it belongs there. You have carried other people's words into your house. Their doubts. Their judgments. Their expectations. Their silence. Their changing behavior. Their inability to understand you. And without realizing it, you placed those things inside your heart as though they were yours to keep. But Archangel Michael's symbolic message says, inspect what you have been carrying. Not everything delivered to your life deserves permanent residence in your spirit. Some opinions belong back outside the door. Some disappointments have already taught their lesson and no longer deserve another room. Some memories can be honored without becoming your identity. Stay with me. Something surprising happens when you begin clearing that inner house. You create space. And space is where the new chapter enters. There is a second movement happening now, and it begins with a light appearing where you expected another shadow. Don't look away now, because this is where the mystery surrounding that surprising news becomes clearer. Imagine waking up and sensing that something is different before you can explain why. Nothing obvious has changed. The same ceiling is above you. The same walls surround you. The same world waits outside. Yet inside, something feels lighter. This is the spiritual symbolism of transition. Major changes are often recognized internally before they become visible externally. A seed changes beneath the soil long before anyone sees green above the ground. Dawn begins beyond the horizon before sunlight touches your window. A decision begins inside someone's heart before their words reach your ears. An opportunity can begin forming before your name is ever mentioned. That is why you must not measure everything by what is visible today. Stay till the end. The emotional twist is approaching. You thought you were waiting for news, but somewhere, something may have been waiting for you to become ready for it. Consider how different you are from the person you were months ago. There are things you would once have tolerated that you now recognize immediately. There are situations that once controlled your emotions that no longer have the same power. There are people you once chased for understanding whom you can now release with peace. There are questions that once kept you awake that you can finally place down. That growth did not happen loudly. Nobody delivered a certificate announcing that you had changed. Yet you did. And because you changed, the same opportunity that might once have overwhelmed you could now be handled differently. The same relationship that might once have made you lose yourself would now require mutual respect. The same dream that once seemed impossible could now be approached with discipline rather than desperation. What comes next changes everything because preparation sometimes looks exactly like delay while you are living through it. You ask, why isn't anything happening, while life is quietly building the person who will know what to do when something finally happens? Your answer is closer than you think. Picture another scene. It is evening. Your symbolic house is quiet. Then a warm glow appears beneath the front door. You approach slowly, expecting to find something outside, but when you open the door there is no package, no mysterious stranger, no impossible object. There is simply a path illuminated beyond your doorstep. And suddenly you understand, heaven did not send something for you to store. It sent somewhere for you to go. That is the second revelation. Sometimes the gift is direction. Sometimes the surprising news is an invitation to move differently. A new routine. A new decision. A new boundary. A new conversation. A new willingness to try again. Something huge is waiting for you, but waiting does not always mean standing still. There are seasons when patience means remaining calm, and there are seasons when faith means taking the next responsible step even before you can see the entire staircase. Don't skip. There is a reason the path begins at your house. You cannot carry every piece of the old atmosphere into the new destination. Imagine packing a suitcase for this symbolic journey. What would you take? Courage. Wisdom. Compassion. Lessons. Patience. Discernment. What would you leave behind? Constant comparison. The need to prove yourself. The habit of interpreting every delay as rejection. The belief that another person's inability to recognize your value somehow reduces it. The fear that because something did not happen yesterday, it cannot happen tomorrow. Stay with me. The suitcase becomes lighter with every unnecessary weight you remove. And then you notice something written inside the lid: you were never being prepared merely to receive. You were being prepared to sustain. That sentence changes the entire story. Many people ask for doors but never prepare for what happens after those doors open. They ask for opportunities without building consistency. They ask for meaningful relationships without learning communication. They ask for peace while continually inviting chaos back inside. They ask for a new chapter while reading the old one every night. But your season of preparation has been teaching you something deeper. Receiving is one moment, sustaining requires character. Don't look away now. The surprising news entering your house may be connected to something you once requested, but perhaps it arrives differently because you are different now. You may recognize that what you truly needed was not exactly what you originally asked for. You asked for a particular door, you needed direction. You asked for someone's validation, you needed self-respect. You asked for immediate answers, you needed discernment. You asked for everything to become easier. You needed to discover that you were stronger than you realized. You asked for the old chapter to return, you needed permission to begin something better. This is where the story begins at a deeper level. The greatest spiritual surprises are sometimes not additions but transformations. Heaven does not merely place something in your hands within this fictional story, it changes how you hold it. Something huge is waiting for you, and the next symbol reveals why. Imagine 3 windows in your house. The first looks backward toward a road you already traveled. The second looks toward another person's house. The third looks toward an open horizon. For a long time, you stood at the first window, reviewing what happened. Then you stood at the second, comparing your timeline to someone else's. But Archangel Michael gently points toward the third. Stay till the end. The third window contains no detailed map. That is what makes it uncomfortable. You cannot see exactly where the road ends. But you can see enough light to know there is somewhere worth walking. Your answer is closer than you think. You do not need every answer to take one wise step. You do not need to know the entire future to stop returning emotionally to something that already finished. You do not need universal approval to honor what brings peace into your life. And you do not need to force a miracle to recognize a meaningful opportunity. What comes next changes everything. The surprising news may arrive as confirmation of something your intuition has quietly understood for a long time. Perhaps you already know which direction brings peace. Perhaps you already know which habit must change. Perhaps you already know which dream deserves another attempt. Perhaps you already know that you have outgrown a certain version of yourself. The mystery is not always discovering something completely unknown. Sometimes the mystery is discovering why you kept resisting what you already knew. Don't skip. There is another emotional twist. Imagine hearing a knock at the door. You open it and see nobody. You look down and find a mirror resting against the doorstep. At first you are confused. You expected a message, but you received your own reflection. Then beneath the mirror are the words, "The person who must recognize the blessing first is you." Suddenly everything becomes quiet. How many times have you waited for someone else to recognize your potential before you took yourself seriously? How many times have you waited for permission to begin? How many times have you treated your own dreams as less important because nobody else seemed excited about them? How many times have you allowed temporary circumstances to define permanent possibilities? Stay with me. The mirror represents accountability without shame. You cannot control every door, every person, every delay, or every outcome. But you can decide what kind of person answers the door when opportunity finally knocks. You can decide whether disappointment makes you bitter or wiser. You can decide whether uncertainty freezes you or teaches you patience. You can decide whether your home, your inner world, becomes a warehouse for old pain or a sanctuary for new possibility. Don't look away now, because another revelation is approaching. The news is not entering an empty house. It is entering a house that has survived seasons nobody fully understood. Every room carries evidence of endurance. Every quiet corner remembers moments when you almost gave up on something important but continued. Every window has watched mornings arrive after nights that seemed unusually long. And that means the house itself becomes part of the message. You are not standing where you started. Even if the external scenery appears familiar, internally you have traveled miles. Something huge is waiting for you because the person receiving the next chapter is not the same person who entered the previous one. This is why certain things could not arrive earlier. Not because you were unworthy, but because timing changes the meaning of a gift. A conversation at the wrong moment becomes confusion. An opportunity before preparation becomes pressure. A relationship without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. Recognition before maturity can become distraction. But when timing and readiness meet, what once seemed overwhelming can suddenly feel natural. Your answer is closer than you think. And somewhere inside this symbolic house, a clock begins ticking, not as a threat, not as pressure, but as a reminder that your life is happening now. You cannot spend every present moment negotiating with yesterday. There are things ahead that deserve the attention you have been giving the past. There are people you have not met. Ideas you have not explored.